You may notice that some students are much less comfortable with subtraction than they are with addition. And so if that's the case, you might notice students doing this even without you showing them or prompting them, or you could also show them this method. So one method is if you want to divide two numbers, you could actually multiply instead, right? You could do repeated addition instead of repeated subtraction. You can do that because we already talked about how any division problem can be written as a multiplication problem, right? So you just have to make sure that you repeatedly add the divisor, knowing that you have to stop before or at your dividend, right? So we're going to repeat the previous two examples, but do this with repeated addition instead, right? So that first one was 60 divided by 22, right? So the equivalent division would be, what do you multiply by 22 in order to get 60, right? So knowing that if we were multiplying something by 22, we're just adding 22 repeatedly. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to add 22 repeatedly, knowing that I can't go past 60, right? So 22 plus 22, that would be 44, right? And so then I would say, well, can I add another 22 to that, right? So can I add 22 to that, or would that take me beyond 60, right? And you might need to, count to do that. Maybe we, do 45, 46, 47, on my fingers to figure that out. So what we should eventually figure out, though, is that actually, if I were to go from 44 to 60, what would I add to that? So like 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. So that's 6 more to get to 50, and then another 10 to get to 60. So I'd actually add 16. And you're really doing subtraction there, you just may not realize it, or a student may not realize it, right? So since that 16 is less than 22, it's the remainder. But this is what would get me to a total of 60. So then how do I find my answer? I would look at this and say, okay, how many times did I add the divisor? How many times did I add 22? So this was 122. This was a second 22. So I did that twice, right? And then since this number was less than 22, in order to get me to 60, that's the remainder. So again, my answer here is 2 with a remainder of 16. Technically 2, what was that again? It was markers, right? So 2 markers with 16 left over, 2 markers each, 16 left over. So then let's look at the second one. So we had 85 divided by 14. And so what I would do is I would just repeatedly add 14. And I just know I can't go past 85, right? So 14 plus 14, that would be 28. Let me add another 14 to that. So that's going to be 42. Another 14 to that. 56. Another 14 is going to make that 70. And you might, like, when you do this, it's very normal that you might go too far, and that's okay. Then you just realize you went too far, and you stop or you erase, right? So let's see, this gives me 84. So hopefully we would notice it there, like, oh, I'm at 84. I can't possibly add another 14 to get to 85. So I would stop there. But if you didn't, you would just, you'd go ahead and say, okay, add another 14, and say, oh, wait a second, that's way too big, right? So then I'd have to erase that and go back to the previous step. So how do I get to 85? That's just one more, right? So adding 1 to that would get me to the 85 total. So how many times did I add 14? This was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And then I had to add another 1 to get me to my dividend. So this is a 6, remainder 1.